Welcome back, horror fans, cinephiles, and Giallo enthusiasts. This is Tanner Leeser, your host for all things Giallo here on The King and Giallo, and this is another unscripted talking head movie review for the 1972 Giallo film, the third Giallo film directed by Lucio Fulci, Don't Torture a Duckling. Gosh, where do I begin with this? Okay, so this is one that I have seen a very long time ago. I've owned it. I had it on Blue Underground, and so this was one I was looking forward to covering when I eventually went through all of the films in chronological order as best I could. And getting to it now, I rewatched it like 3 times on the new Blu-ray I have from Arrow, which was funny because it was still sealed, and I think I'd had it for like a year, and I just finally was the time to crack it open. And I watched it in Italian for the first time. So that was interesting. I do have to say though that the English dub is still not that bad. And oftentimes the English dubs are like really torturous for me to listen to. Like they just sound so bad. Maybe the Italian dubs sound as bad in Italian as the English ones sound in English, but I don't know. There's just something a little unnatural, a little inauthentic. I don't know. But it's most of the times when you hear an English dub for a foreign movie, it just sounds off. Not all of them are really good. But anyways, so I rewatched the movie a few times because I was kind of nervous talking about it because it's such a well-regarded film. For a lot of people, this is their favorite Fulci Giallo film. And for a lot of people, this is also in their top 10 Giallo films list. I don't know, but I've been going through all of these movies for 1972, and certainly this is going to be in the top 10 for me, but I'm like, but is this going to be my number 1? Is this even going to be in my top 3 or 5 for 1972? I don't know. It's been such a packed year, and there's a lot of movies that I know I really, really enjoyed, and maybe it's because it was my first time watching them. Like Smile Before Death, I really enjoyed, but we'll see. But for now, let's talk about Don't Torture a Duckling. So this is written by Lucio Fulci and Roberto Gianviti and Gianfranco Clerici. Stars Tomas, Milian. If you want to say Thomas Milian, that's fine. It's totally fine. Florinda, Bolkan is also in it. Barbara Bouchet. Those are the main players. Irene Pappas, Marc Porel, George Wilson, Ugo D'Alessio, and Antonello Campodifiori. Gosh, that is a mouthful. They don't get enough praise, but the cops in this movie actually play a pretty big role. They're not just like in the background. So the IMDb plot synopsis for this is: when a southern Italian town, it's Sicilian, not that really makes a big difference. It kind of does in terms of how rural it is, but when a southern Italian town is rocked by a string of child murders, the police and 2 urban outcasts search for the culprit amid scapegoating within the superstitious community. Yeah, so this one starts off with you're seeing someone it looks like they're digging up a body or burying something over the hillside, looking over the valley with this giant, like, I don't know if it's an interstate, this freeway, highway that's on this like viaduct. Really cool. Also reminds me of like the old days of being in Seattle when the viaduct was still there. Anyways, not there anymore. But yeah, then you meet these cast of kids, these little rabble rousers. It's like 4 boys, I think, 3 or 4 boys, and they like to. They go to church. I think I don't recall exactly how if they're orphans or it's like the church is just taking care of them. Like I don't really understand that exactly. Maybe it's because I just never really saw anything like that anywhere I grew up. But because they're not, like I said, they're not exactly orphans. A lot of these kids have parents. They have families, and some of them still live at home. But I guess it's like daycare, school, all in one. Small town, I don't know. But they like to get up to some trouble. They sneak off to smoke cigarettes, which maybe isn't that bad. That's pretty Italian. Pretty European, I would say, in general. Also pretty 70s, I guess. But they like to play soccer, and they like to sneak off to where some of the prostitutes take their Johns to have rendezvous, and they like to not even. It's funny, like they're not even spying on them as much as they're spying on the peeping Tom spying on them. And what is really interesting about this movie, besides the fact that it's very rural, contrasting the vast majority of Giallo films, which are very urban, set in a city, amid the asphalt, the concrete, the lights, reflecting off of the puddles on the street, cars, all that stuff. No. This is in a very old, like I said, Sicilian town, and you get these very provincial style people, very, like, I'm trying to not be insulting, but they are very backwards. And it's funny because in some of the scenes where you're seeing like the crowd of locals kind of mobbing the town area when things are getting out of hand, you're seeing my gosh, how do I say this? I'm trying to think of a funny joke here, but the point I'm trying to make is these people have very few teeth in their head. Very few teeth. There's some people that are just like, and it's like 1, 2, 3. And then look at this person, you're like 1, 2. And I don't know if they just found the people with the worst teeth and just said put them in the front, have them jeering and screaming. That'll just kind of really set the tone. But it's certainly like, oh, we're dealing with this. Yeah, we have this in the United States too. But anyways, these people are very superstitious, and here they're very dogmatic, I guess you could say. They're very religious. But then Florinda Bolkan's character, who I think her name is Maciara, she's like a practitioner of folk magic, which you could call it black magic. It is pretty much black magic, let's be real here. Also, this is another thing that I find weird reviewing this movie. I feel like most of you have already seen this. And if you haven't seen it, honestly, you should just go check it out. If you're watching this video for whatever reason, and you're interested in Giallo films, this is definitely a quintessential Giallo film that you should see. But I feel like 98% of the people, if not more, who are watching this video have already seen Don't Torture a Duckling. So I don't know how much I'm really going to add beyond what my overview will add or what you may read on the internet or in books. But this is, I'll just give you my thoughts as I'm going along, but I'll try and make this really quick. Sorry, I'm all over the place. The town is superstitious, regardless of whether it is what is sanctioned, Catholicism, or if it's folk magic, black magic, voodoo. Like I said, it's hard to define exactly what she's doing, but she is building dolls. What would you call these? They're facsimiles of actual people, and then she's like piercing them, and like she's trying to curse them. She's trying to kill these people by destroying the totems for them, the dolls for them. And sure enough, murders start happening. And what is really interesting is the first person, I don't want to give into too many spoilers, but the first person that they get is actually a major coincidence, because this person found one of the victims, and this person's an idiot, and they thought maybe I can like blackmail the parents, and they end up catching this guy. And it's like, after a lot of interrogation and back and forth, they realize he doesn't know anything. He found the body, and this is what he's trying to do. And that's really interesting. And I gotta say, also reiterate this, I say it all the time, Fulci really is an underrated writer. I don't know how much of his influence is in the script, but with this, A Lizard in a Woman's Skin, which I believe he also co-wrote, and Perversion Story, again, I believe he also co-wrote that. These are really some of the more solid Giallo film scripts out there. They all are definitely maybe in like the top 20, maybe top 10. Some of those have got to be in the top 10. But it's interesting because he hasn't penned nearly as many as, say, Ernesto Gastaldi, but he seems to have really tight quality. I'll say that. I do like Gastaldi's writing, but he's got a lot of quirks that can get a little obnoxious. Some, like, for example, I've said this before, that I feel Gastaldi really backloads a lot of stuff near the end of the movie. Like, motives and who these people, like, why are they here, all that sort of stuff. And I feel like there's a intentional attempt to confuse the audience or to misdirect the audience, so it's like, haha, you didn't think it was going to be this person because this. And it's like, that's not necessarily good mystery writing. But he is a great mystery writer, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to shit on Gastaldi. I'm just saying that a lot of his scripts do have these little things in them that are like, why are you doing this, man? You know what, this is just a thing in Giallo. Argento does a lot of that in his movies, where you're just like, why are you doing this? You're so good. Anyways, Duckling. Acting is really good. It's shot very well. Probably Fulci's like the best movie he ever shot, to be honest. And there's certain sequences that really, really stand out. I did have something I want to get to that I do think is very interesting about this movie, considering how well praised it is. But before I get to that, let me praise the movie. Ritz Ortolani's score is pretty good. It doesn't take too much of your attention. So like when I think about it, I know there's like the one part in the score that's whenever occult stuff is happening and it's just like dun 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 dun. That's really the main piece that stands out to me. And then there's the piece with it's in Italian and I don't want to butcher it, but it's sung by Ornella Vanoni. I think that's what it is. I'm sorry, I can't read this right now. It's during the sequence where a character is getting beaten to death in a cemetery with a bunch of dudes with chains and like sticks. And it's such a great scene. It is really one of the peak Giallo scenes, and it's so interesting because it's so unique that it's so different. It's so different and so fresh and so unique, and it seems like it's not a Giallo scene, and yet that makes it this eternal one of the greats. And yeah, so the character is walking away, leaving the town, ends up here, notices a number of these guys in different positions kind of boxing them in, and the guy turns on the radio and it just immediately is going to drown out any of the sounds that happen during this encounter. And it goes from Rhythm by Luis Bacalov, and then it goes to Crazy by Wes and the Airedales, and then it goes to this Italian song by Ornella Vanoni. And it's so beautiful. It's so cool. That's the other thing. It is like actually cool, and you're watching something horrific and troubling, very troubling happen, because it is frustrating watching the circumstances of what is happening. It can be a hard watch. What else can I say about this movie before I move on? This is why it was kind of hard for me to actually sit down and record and talk about it, because it's like, what really can I say to add to it other than just my own opinion? The red herrings. There's a great amount of red herrings, and everybody is suspicious for different reasons. Again, this is really great writing. You've got this really weird, clearly got he's mentally handicapped or mentally challenged, but he's a peeping Tom. Then you've got just like the town in general, who are these very superstitious, small-minded people. Then you've got the priest, who gives off that very stereotypical Giallo priest thing, where he's very concerned about purity and about the outside world tarnishing the innocence and just inundating their perfect town with I almost said slaves, with sin. And then you've got the woman, who is the folk magic, black magic practitioner, who is actually casting spells on these victims. And then you've got the woman played by Barbara Bouchet, who they don't go too deep into her backstory, but her dad used to live in the town, and he ended up building this really, really nice fancy house to kind of just like spite everybody. And he left, and the daughter ended up coming to live in the town because she probably got into some trouble, back in her city life. And she just has a fun time seducing anything with a Y chromosome, whether it is a man, whether it is a man of the cloth, whether it is a prepubescent boy. She really gets off on it, and it is really weird. It is really, really weird. And I I know people who've had experiences like that, and it's not like, oh yeah, high five, bro. It's like, no, they were young and they were confused. So I think these kids though are older than that though. I think they're actually totally like, yeah, bro. But still, it's a little awkward. But I'll say that in the grand scheme of child endangerment in Giallo films, there's been worse. This one is just, and also the way this one is shot is like, you can tell that when you see both characters in the same frame, that the little boy is being body doubled by a dwarf. It's very obvious. Like, the kid is very lanky, and the dwarf is a little bit more stocky, and you can just tell in the shoulders and the size of his head. You're like, that's not the same kid. But okay. Yeah, so lots of red herrings, and then you have this woman who is the father of the priest, who I actually didn't catch that for a very long time. And I think a lot of the boys were also her kids. I don't remember exactly what's going on there, but they set her up too. They give her proper reason to suspect her. Okay, now let's get to it. So, for a movie that is frequently considered top 10 Giallo films, easily best Giallo film from this specific director, who is one of the big names in Italian genre films, Don't Torture a Duckling, it does a lot of things. It does two things, I'll say, that kind of go against the stereotypical what we come to expect from a Giallo. It does them in different ways. So what I'm talking about is, and this is also a slasher thing, but sex and violence. You go back to Blood and Black Lace, it's like, Blood and Black Lace is the first one that really kind of set it up, and it's like the second Giallo film. The Girl Who Knew Too Much is still a little bit more leaning into those earlier inspirations like Hitchcock and Edgar Wallace a little bits, but starting with Blood and Black Lace, it really starts to dig its heels into like the killer aesthetic, the sex and violence, the style, the fashion, the elevatedness, I guess, of the genre. But anyways, this movie is fairly devoid of all of that, and it still finds a way to strike. So, for example, there is violence, but in terms of the people who are, like, the kids who are killed, it's like, boink, and like, I think that happens once, and then one kid gets like kind of starts to get strangled, and then it cuts to him getting like thrown on the ground, and you're like, okay, very tame is what I'm trying to say. And then you get like one kid who is very clearly like a dummy, just like underwater, like. And then you got the one kid who, this is probably the best effect, but again, they don't show it, but they pull him out of the water, and he's got like the back of his head is clearly gashed open. And so that's brutal, but we don't see it. We don't really see a lot of the violence. The violence we do see is the character getting killed in the cemetery, getting hit with the chains. And to be fair, I don't think that person would actually die from those wounds. Because having watched it like 3 times in a short period of time recently, I was like, they got hit like 4 times. It was like chained to the arm, but then they get like backhanded, and then they get like chained to the face, and then chained to the leg, and then they just walk away, and the person is like, and they die. I'm like, I don't think they would die, but it's a movie magic. So we do see that, and then the final death is over the top, and I don't want to spoil it, so I'll talk about that I'll talk about that during the Jolly Tally, but it's over the top, but it's also, again, a fake body, so yeah. But yes, so the kills, the stereotypical Giallo kills of the victims, with the killer specifically, are very tame. Now, on the sex side of things, there is some sex, but it's not done in that very exploitation way. It opens, or like early on in like the first 5 minutes, you see some people going off to canoodle in some like little shack, but we don't see it. But you know, there's like a group thing going on in there. I think there's like 2 women, 2 guys, whatever. It's not important. But you know what's going on, but we don't see it. And then we have the scene with Barbara Bouchet where she's like fully naked seducing this boy. And again, that's like the first 15, 20 minutes. And it's up there. But that's it. Interestingly, and it took me a while to really clock this and be like, oh my gosh, whoa. Tomas, Milian, and Barbara Bouchet, their characters, spoiler alert, they don't hook up. They don't get together. Nothing. And I actually appreciate that. I actually appreciate that because it just seems like it would be the stereotypical thing to do, and they don't do it. Because honestly, it would just eat up some of the running time. And the movie is already longer than an hour and 40 minutes. But yeah, we don't really get like unless if I'm forgetting something, I'm going to feel like a complete dumbass. But we don't really get sex or violence in the way that you would come to expect it in a Giallo film. But you do, just in a slightly different way. And that I think is pretty interesting. And I don't know if there's anything else I've got to say right now. If I remember and I end up kicking myself, I'll try to throw it back in, or otherwise I'll save it for the Jolly Tally. But that's what I've got to say. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this review video. You've got to have seen Don't Torture a Duckling. So let me know what your thoughts are about this movie in the comments below. Do you rank this in your top 10? Do you think this is Fulci's best? Do you prefer some of his other ones? I gotta say, I think I prefer some of his other ones. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's a good one, but yeah. Give me your predictions for the AZ score for the movie. How many of these 26 A to Z cliches will be found in this movie? By the way, spoiler alert, I won't be giving D's for dwarf for the body double. But then give me your predictions for the total Jolly Tally score. And last things I'll say, because I just remember them. It wasn't until I was rewatching this movie that I was like, damn, Barbara Bouchet was in a shit ton of movies in 1972. And I almost want to dedicate some time when I do the 1972 like retrospective, going through it and ranking everything and all that. I kind of want to rank like what I think my favorite Barbara Bouchet performances were. I don't know, because she was in a lot, man. Other than that, again, I think that's it. And, oh, keep your eye out for this. My friend who has a channel called Park Narcs, who talks about several different things, but one of the main subjects he revisits periodically is Donald Duck. And we've been meaning to do a Donald Duck Giallo collaboration video, but we were going to have to wait for the New York Ripper. And upon me rewatching Don't Torture a Duckling, I realized Donald Duck is featured in the movie. And not just is Donald Duck featured in the movie, but the Italian title for the movie is Donald Duck. It's Paperino. So I think it's Don't Torture Paperino, or Who Killed Paperino. Paperino is the name the Italians have for Donald Duck. It doesn't mean duckling, it means literally Donald Duck. So that's the Italian title, and I'm pretty sure Disney had to fight them and say, you're not calling this Donald Duck in the United States. And they're like, okay, Don't Torture a Duckling. So that's pretty cool. And so Park Narcs and I are gonna I asked him earlier today, I'm like, hey dude, you want to do a collaboration on Don't Torture a Duckling? So we're gonna do that. We got to figure out how to do it, but we'll see. And hey, you know, if you don't want to watch it, you don't have to watch it. But anyways, this is Tanner Leeser for the King and Giallo, and if nothing else, I'll see you next time.
Allora, Don Alberto, che hanno deciso a Roma? Vi potete sposare? Ah, La prestanza maschile in paese è in rialzo. Comunque, mi tenga informata, perché l'argomento mi interessa moltissimo.